And record. All right. First of all, thank you so much, everyone, for showing up today. We're so thankful for you. This is Robin Sacks and I's way of doing some power coaching, some bring you on, let you see what coaching looks like in real time. I love that Robin and I have met. She is a mindset and confidence coach. I'm an accountability coach. And again, this is the opportunity. You can show up as a fly on the wall, turn off your monitor, turn off your volume, or you can come out and ask your questions. And if we're not getting to you, write out your questions, and we promise next go around we will get to that. So welcome, Robin. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Lindsay. How are you?
I am wonderful. The sun is shining. I'll take it. Yes. So we're going to dive into individuals' questions who are actually on our call today, but one of our regulars is actually heading off to surgery as we speak. So little prayers up for her. And I'm going to read her question because this made me giggle out loud. And Robin, I think you're going to have a heyday with it.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So she said, I keep hearing you and different podcasters say how the changes in the show up and that we should acknowledge every little win, no matter how small, and we should reward ourselves. I do see how this helps. However, we have been complaining that kids get a trophy for just showing up and then they stop trying as hard because everyone gets a trophy. So I'm having trouble differentiate. Okay, I can't talk. Differentiating the two.
Splitting those two apart. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So I thought that you would have the perfect, like, ooh, this is why they both make sense and they both might not at any given point.
Yeah. And I like how you just said that, Lindsay. I understand both sides of it, right? Because so often what gets in our way or gets us really digging deep into something or complaining or running away with something is we're trying to find a right answer. One is good or bad. One is right or wrong. This is how it should be or shouldn't be. And as always, I will invite you to throw all of those black and white words out of your life forever. Thank you, Allison. Black or white thinking, right? Because our brains are trying to make sense of things. And so it's always trying to go, well, what's right or wrong? That's good or that's bad. Throw those words out. The answer is in two places. One, the answer is rarely at an extreme for anything. The answer is almost always in the middle somewhere. So if I'm thinking at either extreme, you are so far off base, and I guarantee we're probably wasting a lot of time and energy, and we're just butting heads and we're yelling at each other or complaining or arguing. Totally useless, right? Not a great use of our time, our energy, right? And we're never going to make our point because we're just going to butt heads. So as we, first of all, one way to think of it is there's always a middle ground. And the thing that exists more in the middle is I can understand what you're saying and where you're coming from, whether I agree with it or not. So it's not right, wrong. It's not good, bad. Both of those things can coexist, right? I can see that, yes, just rewarding everyone for showing up and doing nothing above and beyond that, I can understand how we can look at that and go, but that's not always helpful, because what that teaches you is show up and do nothing and you still get rewarded no differently than the person who shows up and does a ton of things, right? So that is helpful. Exactly, right? Allison, to your point, different people show up as different. You know, when I work with group classes, and one of the first things I do when we're working with things, this is a good example of this, things like public speaking. And I might have 10 people come into a class, and some of them are much more comfortable with it. And they can get up and do, because one of the things we do in public speaking classes with me is one of the first things that happens is you get up and re-record you. Let's get you right there so you can get recorded. You can take your phone and go watch yourself, because I need you to see how you're showing up outside of your head, not just inside of your head, right? So when that happens, some people get a little nervous or on edge, but they're okay with it. Some people get up, and whether we can see it or not, they are completely filled with so much anxiety, they can barely do what they need to do, but they get up and do it. When people come back in the room and I say, you just watched yourself, I want you to tell me what went well and what you would like to change. when somebody says, well, I guess I made some eye contact and I guess I got my point across, but here's what I'd like to change. And they tell you all those things. Some people say, I liked absolutely nothing. And to those people, if we can get them to honestly say, I got up there and I did it, and there's nothing more, those show ups in perspective for those people are huge. I am not comparing them. This person's simply standing up in front of the room and talking while people are looking at them. And this person's going, well, I did a couple of things right. I'd really like to get better with my posture. We might not think of those as the same things. Those are huge wins for both of those people. And so when we start comparing and saying, this is what it should look like, and if it looks different, it's wrong, that is a really short-sighted way to look at that. So that is one piece of this. For some people, showing up is a big deal. Because guess what? If you don't show up, guess what? You can't do anything good. 80% of success is showing up, right? It's been attributed to many people. Somebody said that. So there we go. Secondly, the other side of that is, yeah, if I'm showing up and getting it, know that if I just show up, I'm going to get the same kudos as these people who are actually showing up and doing a lot more than that. If I'm using that as my baseline and I'm not moving from there, yeah, that's detrimental. That doesn't help you. That doesn't help anybody else. And so I can see both sides of that. So again, Lindsey, comparison is the thief of joy. So perspective is everything. There is no right, wrong, good, bad, better, worse. It's perspective. For this person, was that a win? If so, we're going to celebrate it. I don't care what it looks like or what you think about it. We're going to celebrate that win. If this person has 30 more wins than this person, I expect this person's next win that we celebrate to look very different than this one. Why would I expect them to look the same? Right? Allison, one person's step 1 is another person's step 20. Your win when you're on chapter 2 of doing something is going to look different than the person who's chapter 32. I expect those to look different. That doesn't mean I'm not going to celebrate both of those equally. The problem or the challenge comes in when somebody has been working at it and has the ability and the wherewithal and the knowledge to apply these small wins, and they could be on step 3 or 4 or chapter 5 or 6 now, and they're still hanging out at chapter 2, and we're going to have a talk. Because now that's where we call that, well, now it's either an excuse or you're just not ready to do it. So let's stop pushing it. Because if you know it and we know how to do it and you could do it and you know when you do it, it does well, but you're not doing it, I'm going to start suggesting that's a choice. And maybe we're simply not ready. So let's stop pushing that. Let's go to something else you're ready for. And we can always come back to that. So this perspective piece is a huge piece. You've got to get out of black or white thinking things are right or wrong, or it should look one way. And that is how you celebrate wins. The participation trophy isn't the topic. We don't care about the participation trophy. Why is somebody getting that win? Why? For them, that's the thing I want to focus on. It's not the what, it's the why. And right there, you can tell if somebody is ready and moving and ready to have another win. And if somebody's very simple, basic, something that you might think isn't a big deal, that's a big win for them. Perspective is how that works. That is my take on that. Lindsey, what are your thoughts?
Oh no, you rocked it. That was beautiful. I love the 2-part of that as well. The no comparing part is huge. And then expectations, what was really getting highlighted in my mind, because if expectations aren't set appropriately, if we expect something too easy, of course, we're not going to celebrate it because we already knew in our head, like we know, right? It goes back to like, as an individual, we have the knowledge. We already know if that was something that we're challenging ourselves appropriately versus just throwing it on the list so you can check it off. And sometimes that's good just to see checkoffs, but if we're hitting walls or we're stagnated, then we need to at least ask ourselves the question, is there that one more baby step that I could do where that win's going to feel a little more relevant to me? It's going to feel like I did earn the trophy. which was the funny part there. Okay. No,
And you
thank
know what?
you.
Hey, Lindsay, can I respond to one thing in here? And because I think
Mhm.
this is a big deal. So Allison said, if someone never celebrated, learning to celebrate is huge, right?
Mm.
And that's a key point because we're very, it's very autopilot, no judgment, just awareness, because this sometimes comes from outside of us. This often comes from inside of us. If all we do is criticize, or all we are is criticize, to Allison's point, you don't even know celebrating is an option, or you don't know how much that can help. And here's the key. Please stop waiting for other people to celebrate you. You have got to learn to start celebrating yourself. And that is the biggest thing that, again, often a coach, somebody else outside of you, can help you do that, because you don't have to wait for other people. And that's so often we get bogged down with, I just wanted this person to say that. Why couldn't they just tell me once they're proud of me? Why couldn't they just tell me once that I did a good job? Why couldn't they? Let me ask you a question. How many times have you said to yourself, you know what, I'm proud of me. You know what, I did a good job. You know what, I did show up. For me, that was a big deal. You have got to learn to celebrate yourself, because if you're waiting for the rest of the world to celebrate you, you're going to be disappointed, not because they're not wanting to be there or everybody can't be supportive. Everybody is struggling with the same things themselves. And so their focus is always the same as yours, which is opposite of yours. I'm not thinking of you, I'm thinking of me, right? I can't celebrate you because I'm too busy criticizing me. I'm waiting for you to tell me I'm doing well, but you're so focused on me telling you you're doing well that neither of us tells each other we're doing well. Think about that, right? And it's amazing when you stop to go, please stop waiting for everybody else to make you feel better, to help you, to say you're doing great. You don't ever have to wait for anyone. You can do that all the time. And that is where you start to learn you're in a lot more control than you think if you allow yourself to remember that and practice that.
And I love that you just said that, Robin, because we do wait. And if anyone in that moment of hearing Robin say that felt like she was speaking directly to you, that's because that's how common it is. Yes. She's not speaking directly to you. She's speaking to all of us because we fall into that. And we've
Yeah.
had a couple of you jump on late, and I just wanted to reintroduce Robin for a moment, mindset and confidence coach and one of my podcasting buddies. And that this first topic that we just hit on, and if you missed it and wanted to come back, was the whole concept of, if we're not supposed to just give trophies out to everybody, then how are we supposed to celebrate these small wins? And celebrating small wins is really hard for individuals. We can hear it. We can hear that it's important to do it, but then to acknowledge it is a totally different story. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that. Okay, we can move on
Hey,
from this
Lindsay.
topic. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you keep
Uh,
trying to conclude and move on. Sometimes it helps for people to have a little visual. I think a
yes.
simple visual to go with this is, if you're looking at a staircase and all you're doing is focusing on the next landing,
Mm.
you're never going to get there. And you're going to constantly criticize why you can't get there, why you're not there, why you're still. I want you focusing on the next step, nothing else, because you have to step on the next step to get to the landing. You can't just teleport to the landing. That's not how reality works. If you focus on the little step, you're a step closer. And now just focus on the next step. And all of a sudden, you find yourself at the landing. But if you're staring at the landing saying, that's where I want to go, and you don't come back to step 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4, you will never get to the landing. That's how everything works in real life. Stop looking at the landing, or look at the landing and then go, so how do I get there? I get there by focusing on this one little thing right here. That's how you do anything.
You know what? And that visual is perfect because that also means that if we're rewarding ourselves for staying on the same step, then maybe that's when we're getting the undeserved trophy, right? We've got to be, in
Exactly.
fact, taking the next step. Yes. It
Right?
was a great visual. Yes. And I'm not trying to bump us along. This was such a good topic. Um, but I do at this moment want to open it up. Who has a question ready for us, or we will just keep booging along. You want to just do a little hand raise?
Yeah, and it looks like I
Yeah,
see a couple of
Kathy.
things.
Kathy.
Okay, well, and I made a comment on it too with a second one. I'm filling out forms and things for Lindsay because I'm doing that 12-week program with just a couple of highlights that I really want to hit. And one of the things I noticed when I filled out my why, it's so funny. My life has changed. I'm different from what I was. And I'm not adapting to the new me, or I don't know how to adapt to the new me very well. First of all, it's the first time of being really alone long term. Okay, because when I lost my first husband, my dad came to live with me. So I still had somebody there that I was nurturing and taking care of, and somebody to talk to, and blah blah blah. Now with my family, I am good. I'm really good when I am surrounded by or with my family, talking to family, and so forth. But there are a lot of alone moments. And one of my second one, it sounds, it's sad, but it is reality for widows and widowers. I have a widows connection group that I absolutely adore. And we're all saying the same thing. We're alone, and you can go out and do some things, but you still are coming back to a place where you're alone. And what I'm noticing right now is my overall thinking, when you can't line up one thing, you're lining up all three things. And if they're lining up, things are going well. If one thing's out of sync, something else is going to be out of sync as well. And mine right now is my motivation and my, it would be like, I've never been a big eater. I haven't been, but I am out of control on portion sizes if I like something. That's never been part of the equation, ever, never. And it is now. Snacking, and I'm mindless eating. That's the emotional eating side of this. And I know it all stems from being alone. So the question is, what is that next step? I love the starting point, your starting point one, or the next step that says, what do I do next? What is next? I'm not taking out an ad. Not doing it. And I have Charlie. Charlie's wonderful. I love Charlie, but she's not a communicator.
She's a
except
dog.
she communicates love. She does do that. But I miss that. So I think it's yeah, I'm in two different. I'm another person. I'm one person when I'm with people, and I'm another person when I'm alone. And I don't like this person very much. I'm not proud of that person. I don't know. That person's like in a hole somewhere, and I like this one over here. So that's where I am. Cheers.
I know, Robin.
I have a couple of thoughts. So, and there's some good stuff coming up, right? Going out, meeting new people, right? Doing some more stuff in your home. I want to take a couple things, and I want to start with the mindset shift, because I'm all about, let's first step back before we jump in and find a couple of, let's find things that work. Because again, our brains always want to go solve the problem. I have a problem, solve the problem.
Yes.
What we miss, because that's often step 3 or 4, we miss steps 1 and 2. And it's very normal to do that, because our brain's job, you've heard me say this, if you've ever been on a call with me, your brain's job is not to keep you happy. Your brain's job is to keep you safe. That's how our brains work, which is why our brains always jump into panic mode, or what do I need to do about this? When we talk about mindfulness or a mindset shift, we step back and we go, okay, I want to start with what's happening up here. And let's see if there's a shift in perception or perspective that we can start with, and then start jumping into some of these things. So here are a couple of things to think about. And Kathy, stop me, or if I am going in a misdirection or overstepping anything, you tell me so I can stop, okay? Because I don't have this experience. And so I want to make sure I'm talking appropriately about this, okay?
Okay.
So one thing that you keep saying is, I can go out and be me in that way. And because you said I don't like the other person, I'm not enjoying them very much. Is it fair to say you like the person that is out there sometimes with other people. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, yeah, because I'm me. That's me. This is me. I don't know who this one is.
Excellent. All right, cool. So I do like that. So I like me. So that's fantastic. When I come back, the words that keep sounding like they're coming up are when I'm this other person, I'm lonely and I don't know how to be that person. Is that
Right.
accurate?
Right. Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I want to take the word alone that came up also. So I want to play play with this for a moment. Right now, because of the way I'm feeling, and I don't care for this person as much as I'm liking this person, when this person is alone, what starts to happen is in our mind, sometimes we go, when I'm alone, that's not a good thing. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So
given time, okay, over a period of time, I'm going to say, like, when it first happened, you don't recognize that as that there's a pattern here.
Certainly.
Okay.
So I want to play with this word alone a little bit.
Okay.
Right now, because of the situation, because of real life, because of reality, alone feels not like a good place to be right now.
Right.
Right. Okay. I want to start thinking of alone a little differently. Okay. And again, stop me if you feel this is overstepping or this isn't appropriate to say. Were there times that you were alone or on your own when you were with your husband, when he was here?
Boy, not much, because I'm a real, yeah, not a lot, but yeah. There have been times, yes, that I know that I actually like being, like, if I'm reading and I don't want everybody bothering me. Yes, so there are moments.
Okay, so that alone was a choice, right?
Yes.
So it's interesting because a lot of times when we feel feelings, we just go with the feeling and we sort of let the feeling dictate what it means, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But if we think of those feelings as, okay, I actually can be alone, and sometimes there's good alone and sometimes there's not good alone. Would that be fair?
Right, absolutely.
Okay, so when there was good alone or choice alone, you mentioned reading, Kathy. What other things did you enjoy when you were choice alone or when you are choice alone? So reading?
Like gardening or and cooking, although I would rather do that with other people. You know, a nice hot bath. I mean, that's a good thing to do alone. Yeah, you know what? Other than that, I can't really think of too many times that I would choose to be alone.
All right, but there are some that you would, correct?
Yeah.
I could even grab a great book. I can go sit in the yard or in my garden with a chair on a nice sunny day and read my book. I could go sit in the bath. I can read my book. I can even combine some of these things, right? So and Lindsay, I like what you just said. What does bring you joy alone? Because what we tend to do, and this is just very human, when we feel an emotion, especially if it's not a good emotion or comfortable emotion or preferred emotion, we lose the ability to look at the other side and go, what can I feel this feeling with? But actually have it not feel that bad is not the word, but that heavy. I don't know what we want to call that. Yes, I am alone. And what are some things that I do find joy in alone? Now, that doesn't change reality. That doesn't change the situation. That doesn't automatically make you Pollyanna going, I love being alone all the time. Everything is perfect, because that's not reality, right? Absolutely not. The idea here is, again, kind of talking about the steps, right? If I'm someplace and I sort of want to come out of that place a little bit, I don't need to come over here and go, I love being alone, because that may never happen, and that doesn't have to happen, right? I want to come to the middle a little bit more is what I want to do. And so, maybe I do go take a cooking class, because that is something. And then I am doing something I enjoy alone, but I'm doing it with other people too. So that starts to pull me a little more in the middle. And then I might come home and cook for myself, doing something I learned in the class. That brings me a little bit of joy, right? It moves me a little more to the middle. Maybe I don't even have to leave my house. Maybe I, go to the library once a week and grab a book that I love. And every week I have a thing I check off my list. I read a new book, or maybe I join a book club. I don't even have to leave the house. Maybe I get an app like Goodreads. There's a whole bunch of cool apps where you can track that stuff and start to enjoy the to-do of reading. That might bring you a little bit closer to center. The more things I can do where I already enjoy being alone with that stuff, again, it's not going to change sometimes I am going to feel this, and I understand why. And I'm going to say, yes, I'm going to let myself feel that sometimes. And that's okay. There's a reason. That means it was a wonderful marriage. That's what that means. And so I love that. I can also enjoy to love being alone too. And I can be in here instead of being here, if that makes sense. So the mindset shift is alone doesn't always mean bad or very heavy emotion. Sometimes alone can mean this feels nice and it's okay. Or I get to have my space. I get to do things that bring me joy.
Okay.
And that'll kind of start moving the needle at times. Again, this isn't about Pollyanna. This isn't about don't honor what you feel because that's real, right? Don't not feel that. But let's find some ground here where it starts moving the needle a little bit. And see, watching cooking shows, right? That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's okay.
Great idea, Allison, right? And again, that idea of alone can be a choice, alone can be forced upon us, right? Like Lindsay just said. When it's forced upon us, we do need to work through it, deal with it. What do I need to do with that? Maybe go through some motions, maybe talk to people, maybe go into a grief group. There's like you're doing wonderful with that, Kathy. You've made some choices with that, right? Sometimes alone is a choice. I don't want alone to always feel heavy, I guess is what I'm saying. I want alone to sometimes go, yep, this is a heavy alone. Hey, this is a choice alone.
If I can just, and it's not the same, but if I can say something, Kathy, I lost my dad, who was and I'll probably start crying if I do, I'm sorry, and Robin already knows this, but
Don't be sorry.
But he was my person. And I was the one who told him if he had to go, he could, which was the hardest thing I ever had to tell anybody. And I couldn't put pictures up. I had nothing in my house up because it made me sad. And all I could think about was the hospital, which is why when Lindsay was talking about when she lost her dad, I'm crying as I'm listening to her book yesterday. But Robin told me, and I'm so grateful for her. And when you guys were talking, it just made me think of this. And I'm not saying you don't, but I could only see hospital. I could only see sick dad. I could only see bad, right? Instead of he took me to my first day of school and all the positives, and I couldn't go there for a really long time. And then Robin's like, put the damn pictures up. And I'm like, okay. And then I did, because she's mean sometimes. And then I did. And but it was like 3 years later. Like I didn't have pictures up. I didn't whatever. And she's like, and again, you might already do this, but she's like, you're doing a disservice to him if you only can think of the bad. And so what do you remember that made you happy or whatever, right? And my dad and I liked Monty Python. And that might be like totally inappropriate, but we like that kind of humor. So I would watch Monty Python or I'd listen to that and I would, hear the music and it would make me smile. And I would think of the things that made me feel good. I'd listen to jazz and that made me think of my dad and that made me feel better. I know everybody doesn't like it, but going and sitting with my dad at the cemetery and looking around at what I now see as his house and hearing the birds and seeing the clouds makes me feel better. So it just, and I'm sorry, like I said, I don't know if you do this all already, but like bringing in, if you don't already, the positives, because I am so firmly believing in you do not have to, and Robin is not on the same side as me about this, and that's okay. I feel like my dad is with me all the time. I get signs all the time. She says the birds are mating now. It's like, shut up. The birds are here. They're my dad. Leave me alone. But with everything I have and with the grief people I follow, we believe that. right? So I find a dime, it's like, Dad, saying hi, you know, because that's a thing that I read, that they leave coins or whatever. So I've been really working hard to learn to look for the signs and enjoy the, even though Robin tells me they're not, but whatever. But enjoying them for me, because that's what I believe and that's what I need and that's what my heart wants or whatever. So I really feel like he's with me all the time. And the only part that's hard is when I physically want him to be here and he isn't. But otherwise, he's always there. And so I guess I just wanted to say, I don't know if you believe in that. And if you don't, that's fine. But like maybe just thinking he's out, like I'll see a bird and I'll be like, hi, Dad. And people would probably look at me and be like, why are you talking to the bird? And it's like,
I do
it's my
that.
dad. But
Blue herons.
but
Yeah, Allison, I want to use your example because this was a good example, and it's going to go back to the emotional eating part of what Kathy was bringing up. You're mentioning, Allison, all your self-soothing aspects that work beautifully for you that have nothing to do with food, right? And I feel
I
like
didn't realize that. And I didn't say you're right. They don't. Usually
they
they
don't.
do. But
I
in
know,
those
and they're
instances,
very
no, they don't.
comforting. Yes.
Yay
And
me! I'm celebrating a small win. Yay!
yes. And you can celebrate that and give yourself a trophy if you want to. But that's what came to my mind, Kathy, when you mentioned the food, or like you're not happy with more food. It's serving a purpose for you, and your purpose for it at the moment sounds like numbing, and we do that a lot with food. We do that a lot with alcohol. We do it with different, just because it's a quick fix. So the good part is you're like insightful about it. And then it's then in that moment where you're seeking the food and you're not already hungry, that why and where is it really serving you? Do you feel sad and alone at that moment? Do you need to pick it apart and see what else could make you, if you're feeling sad, what makes you happy? Do you need to like exit the scene? Do you need to call somebody, get social? To Robin's point. So thank you. I love when these kind of components come together, because you can see it as a whole. Like we all do this. We all use food outside of the spectrum of I'm eating only because I'm hungry. Like that's ridiculous, right? And
Right.
so sometimes it's this fine line of it's serving me, but other times it's more than doing that fine line. And how do we want to make sure that we kind of take that and walk away from, there's something else you need at that moment and it's not food.
I thank you. This really is helping. Okay, and one of the things that pops to mind is to be deliberate as far as exiting that scene and doing something else that does give me joy. Whether and I talked to blue herons are that's Windrow.
See, Robin, shut up.
There was one
Okay,
that
so-
crossed the pond this morning. I said, "Hey,
Be nice to Robin.
I like her and
talked to
she
her.
knows it.
So I need to bring one thing in, because this is a coaching moment. This in coaching is what we call a pattern interrupt. And when we
Oh.
talk about self-soothing things, again, as Allison knows, I do things very intentionally.
Right.
Here's a key to understand about coaching. When you are not someone who can stand up for yourself or fight for the things that work for you or you believe, you sometimes need somebody to come in and poke the bear. And that is very intentional, going, that's not what that is, because what does that instantly make you do? Stand up and defend what you believe and what your thing is right, and that this works for you and you don't care. And you would never say that unless somebody came in and poked the bear. And so this is a coaching tactic, which is why Allison makes me sound incredibly mean sometimes.
I don't mean it that way.
Oh, you know, okay.
It's taken you 50 years to get me to reply back to you and get mad.
I got it. But here's the point. It's bringing up a great coaching moment is my point, right? Until sometimes you get somebody to the point where they will open their mouth and defend what works for them and why. Not that it's right or wrong, not that it's good or bad, not that there's one way to look at it and your way is a wrong way. Just to defend, I don't care what you think. This is what helps me.
Okay.
Until you can take someone to that point, you're not going to help them. And so that is a key coaching moment where The moment you started saying, you know what, I don't care that it's mating season. When I see a darn bird or two birds, this is what I think of because it makes me feel good. My answer to that is not you're wrong, but it's you're absolutely right. And it's about time you saw that, right? So that's the other component to this as a coaching experience.
Okay, I didn't say that part, but she said that too.
Thank you. So that's why I'm bringing the other side of the story in, because that side is helpful to people. Because
Right.
we can do that for other people if we understand that's how to get them there sometimes. And it's helpful for us to understand sometimes why people are poking, it feels like, or arguing something. Maybe there's a reason for doing that. So it's a great coaching moment, right? So, you know, Kathy, that along those same lines, I love that word intentional. Right,
Or
Allison,
deliberate. Yeah,
yeah,
deliberate.
you said it, deliberate, intentional. When we are in a place of choice, we are in a very powerful place. Because if we do not give ourselves space to be in a place of choice, we will just go where the emotion takes us. And we are on autopilot and we are completely out of that control. And it just has to play out. And it's going to play out as the habit that it is right now, the feel that it is. When we give ourselves space or that moment to be intentional and deliberate, we just put ourselves in a place of choice. And that is where all your power lies, because that is when you can see both sides. Yes, this exists, and so does this. These things can coexist. Yes, I'm feeling down with this, but what can I take this same thing and go do something that brings me joy, which will get me a little more in the middle? Those are places of choice. And the more I make those choices, the more those choices can become a little bit more of the habit or the autopilot. And now I don't go to that extreme or this extreme as often because we're human. We're allowed to go to an extreme sometimes. Choice allows us to get back in the middle to be able to be a little bit more in control. And, you know, one more thing that goes along with this is for some people, part of that habit and staying in that zone is if I, for example, walk into the same house or the same room and it looks exactly like it did when the other part of me was there that's no longer there, there's a whole lot of subconscious memory that is pulling everything back. If sometimes I move the couch from here to here, or I take this light and I put a different bulb in that's brighter or dimmer, or I take these pictures off the wall and I put them over there, I now actually physically and mentally walk into a different space. And all the things that went along with that original space that I didn't even know were part of what were pulling me back all the time, allow me to walk into a new space, a space I am determining how I feel and where I'm choosing and where my space is. So little things visually, little things in our environment, like Allison mentioned, I couldn't put the pictures up and there came a point I put the pictures up and now they bring me joy. Previous, when I was in a different stage of grief, they couldn't bring me joy. But now that change of environment, the change of how my room looks, can bring me joy because that's what I choose to step into, not what I'm autopilot stepping into. So sometimes those little things can make a huge difference to allow me to get here a little more when this is where it kept pulling me. So environment.
Robin, yeah, sorry, I got to piggyback on this for a minute because this is so good. When you talk subconscious memory or our space or our change of environment, I'm going to keep transferring some things over into food because this is like such good play back and forth with it. But the same thing is happening with our emotional eating when it's happening. So if we are programmed to, when I sit on the couch, that I grab a snack, or when I'm at the counter, I put food out, I put my cheese and crackers and wine out, that just by making the tiniest switch of environment, maybe you go to a different room, get comfy and read a book, all of a sudden our brain is not attached to a food choice in that room. Our brain is not attached to what that is supposed to feel like? Like we expect this comfy feeling in this room, or we expect a lonely feeling in a certain room sometimes. What if we shift to a different room, different environment? Does it all of a sudden detach those food thoughts or lonely thoughts or drinking thoughts? Or you can transfer this over into anything that's your kind of whatever gets you,
Okay.
your thorn. And all of a sudden it's like something that was so hard becomes so much easier.
And Lindsay, to also add on top of that, something that Robin has always told me, and then I heard, I think in your book when I listened to it yesterday, and it was like, oh, I've heard that before. But when I get triggered or anxious, my first thought is eat something. And I like cannot put it in my mouth fast enough. And so Robin would always tell me, if you can go do something else, then usually when you would, and give yourself 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, going, all right, if you want it after however long, eat it. But most of the time when you go read a book instead, or go take a walk or whatever, if you can get yourself like enough to just like not eat it right now, then usually you don't even think about it or want it, or the moment's passed and you don't even go there. Now that doesn't work all the time, but it works some of the time.
I
Yeah,
love
back to
that. Thank
pattern
you.
interrupt. Yeah, right.
Pattern
Like
interrupt,
there's
that's
I
what
know
that
all
is.
about that
I know, but you're doing it when you do.
from both
And
of you.
yeah, and the direction, not perfection part of me with that, I love the pause, because you pause and then you still get to come back to the question of, if I really was hungry, or if I really needed that, I'm allowing myself to still have it, versus this very abrupt, like, I'm never going to eat, I'm never going to emotionally eat again, I'm never going to emotionally drink, I'm never going to, like, it's so unrealistic that we're going to have days where we win at it because we pattern interrupt. And then we're gonna have days where we still 10 minutes later go, screw it. I'm eating what
And
I
I
want to
loved your
eat.
visual from your book, Lindsay, where it was like, because sometimes it's hard for me to know, right? Because I don't read the, cues, I'm hungry, whatever, I'm full. And so it's like, when you said, if I only want the chips, that's not what that means. Or if I only want the cookie, and I've had a little bit of just wanting the chips this week, and I ate them and I got over it and didn't be mad at myself too badly. But it was like, oh, so when you said that, it was like, but if I don't want anything and I only want something, then now I need to try to find something else that fills the void, the hole, the space, the whatever, because that's not me wanting to eat, yes, but needing to eat right now. I don't need to, I want to. And if it was like, oh, an apple, that was like a very visual, I black and white think a lot. Black and white, like, do you want the apple? No, not really, I don't. Well, then that's not what it is. So that I found that very helpful when you put it into that perspective. Like, oh, all right, well, if I want the apple, then that must mean, even if I don't feel hungry, that's what that is.
Right.
If you only want the potato chips, then that's not what that is.
And a cool way to think about that whole idea, again, another great example of pattern interrupt, how powerful that is. One, the goal is never perfection. There is no such thing. Don't ever aspire to perfection and getting it right every time. You will fail miserably, because human beings don't do that. Practice doesn't make perfect. Please throw that phrase in the pile of all those words that you have a pile of over here. Practice makes permanent. The more you do it, the more you do that. And that becomes the primary thing you go to. You don't have to do it 100% of the time. If you do it 80% of the time, you are in the perfect place. I know I just said throw perfect out, but you don't need to do things 100% of the time. That's so unrealistic. That is so impossible, right? To Lindsay's point, cold turkey, just don't do it. Black or white, I'm not doing it. How often does that work? It doesn't. There's a reason. That's not how human beings work. And the word unnecessary is a word I often like to bring in, because it's completely unnecessary to do things 100% of the time. So why are you exerting that much effort in doing that? You don't need to. And so, think about doing something instead of doing nothing. Celebrate the wins, going back to kind of full circle from the beginning. Celebrate the wins of, I did decide I was hungry today and I ate the chips because I was hungry. Tomorrow I ate the apple. The next day I don't eat anything because I realize I'm not hungry. And those are all wins because, again, going back to what we were just talking about with Kathy, you gave yourself a moment of space to make a choice. There is power in that pause. There is where all of your power lies, because that is the only time you're in a place of choice. And that's pretty amazing. So begin to crave experience as opposed to things. The more you crave experiences instead of things, the more you will realize you move to action, you go do things which are instant pattern interrupts, right? As opposed to reaching for the thing, right? Because Lindsay, right, we reach for the thing that soothes us. And whether it actually soothes us or we've created this thing in our head that it soothes us, is often the things that we reach for subconsciously that we say we do that because they soothe us or they're comforting, don't always serve us. So what are the experiences that serve me, right? Maybe I do reach for a book before I reach for the chips. That's what I'm going to start doing. And I'm going to make myself do that. And how do I do that? I need to take the book and put it in front of my face so it's sitting there. I need to take my book and put it on my kitchen counter. So when I go in for the chips, I see my book and go, that's right. That's what I do now. I have to read the book for 5 minutes before I grab the chips. Put things in places where you set your environments up to automatically help you. Because if I walk in the kitchen and all that's ever on the kitchen counter is the stack of Oreos, but I tell myself, don't eat Oreos, that's not good for me. Well, how are you not going to eat Oreos if that's what's sitting there every time you walk in the room? Do yourself a favor and let me set my environment up so that here's my reward. Sure, after I do this, which is sitting right next to it. That's how you start to use your environment to create some of these changes too, and create automatic pattern interrupts. If I walk in the kitchen and see the bag of chips, but I also see my book, it has already pattern interrupted me.
Okay.
I don't have to remember. So you can use your environment really in very smart and powerful ways, very simply.
And just one thing real quick, I wanted to say, just because I think it just leads so well to this. I belong to another group, Robin knows about this, and it's called No Finish Line Nation, because there's never a finish line, right? We're all learning, we're all working, we're all whatever. And there's this one woman who's always thought the way that I did. And like, she was the one I told you, Lindsay, with the mental foundation and whatever. So she made a video yesterday and I loved it. And I sent you late last night, so you probably didn't see it yet, but it was something where she said, my mind was blown because I thought about this and it was like, nobody ever taught us to eat. They taught us to diet. And I was like, huh, that's really interesting. That's so profound. And she was like, so now, yes, I'm not necessarily doing things perfect or whatever, but I'm being intentional, Robin's word, whatever. And I'm going to eat berries on my cereal or whatever the case may be. And she said, and each thought I have, or each whatever moment that I have, I'm like, is there a diet thought in there? And then if she finds that there is, she's like, is that true? Is that just the facts, Robin? But is that true? Is that not true? Is that a diet thought? Is that a real thought? And when she said that, I was like, how many thoughts have any of us who've ever been on a diet, and most of us a ton, that's bad food, that's good food, that's healthy, that's not, don't do that, eat this, don't eat that. And you're like, wait, you don't know what to do. You don't know and then everything changes. Eat low carb, don't eat low carb, eat high protein, don't eat high, and you don't even know what to do. So when she said that, it was just kind of like, oh, like you and I have talked about, Lindsay, learning what works for you. It's not a diet. I loved so much when you smashed that scale, I can't even tell you, but learning how to listen to you. I need this. And I don't care if you don't, I do, right? I need to not mad at myself if I ate the chips today, right? Okay, I ate them, but it's not, no food. And I think Robin has told me this, no food is a bad food or a good food. It's food, right? It's what you think about it, how you use it, whatever, that's maybe not so great. So when she mentioned that, it just like a light bulb went off. And I was just kind of like, nobody told you how to eat. You've only been taught how to diet, and that's not good, and that's not normal, and that's not healthy. So how do we not learn how to diet, and how do we learn to eat? And my way to eat might be different than Kathy's way to eat, might be different than Robin's way to eat, and none of them are bad.
And
Amen
Allison,
on that, Allison. Yes.
yes. And to add one thing to your list of that's not healthy, that's not whatever, it also will never get you to what you want. It's the opposite of the solution you're looking for, the result, which is phenomenal, which you think about it. How many diets has everybody been on? How many of them have worked? How many of them have been sustained? Right? There's all kinds of research that for every diet you've been on, you've gained the weight back plus 5 pounds, right? There's all that kind of stuff. If diets worked, you'd only need one. And if you wanted to lose weight, you'd get on the diet, right? Which is fascinating.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say before we're wrapping up, everyone, I'm so sorry. I like to keep it so you all know that we really do stick to our hour. But I wanted to take Allison's point on this, because if you grew up in a household where you felt like the role modeling was truly diet based, there really wasn't, to your point, a teaching of what does nourishing our body look like from a metabolically, like, how do we get metabolically healthy, not skinny? And so if that's the case, there's this overwhelm that comes with it of now I need to learn everything that everybody else has been learning since birth, right? And I think, yes, there's a percentage of the population who's been benefited and lucky to honestly live in a house that like just kind of taught it as they grow up. But if that wasn't you, I just want to give this like, take a breath with it, because it's baby steps still that will get you there. And Allison and I are far enough along, which is fun in this journey, that, hopefully it doesn't quite feel quite so overwhelming, but I want everybody else to not feel alone, that we can chunk it out. So it's like, oh, that's what, like, we just start at the foundation. We
And
start
that's
at,
where you celebrate the small wins, which if they were someone else's who's done that their whole life, it wouldn't be the same.
Right. And then even people who have witnessed a healthy eating their whole life can still get caught up in the, do I eat organic or do I go vegan or do I do that, because of what our society tells us. And sometimes we need to go, whoa, hang on a minute. Have you eaten your fruits and vegetables today? And if that's not checked off the list, then your brain doesn't get to go anywhere else. Have I looked at protein? There's all these little things that are so beneficial to us that we skip over and think, have I done my macro? Like we go deeper with it, and it doesn't need to happen.
I just thought that was such a mind shift that maybe somebody else would think it was helpful.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love that you all joined today. Robin, do you have any last minute closing thoughts? Oh, before I do say that, and I truly apologize, we were going to talk some ADHD thoughts, and I'm throwing that out there in case anybody wants to also have questions surrounding that. Have you ever felt like your brain's not aligning with the whole, like somebody tells me goals and I'm supposed to go follow them, but my brain's not following the goals? So just thoughts on that. And if you missed anything today, we've got people kind of jumping on late, or people will be watching this video. I just wanted to summarize the bullet points of what you're going to get today. And it's kind of the whole idea of celebrating the small wins, of if you feel like you're emotional eating, it's because it's serving you in some way. So what we really need to dig at is the root of the problem. Why is it serving you? And then to omit the overwhelm, we're back to the baby steps, that full circle. Okay. So Robin, close us out. Where can people find you if they love like where your brain went with everything today? Where do you exist?
You can always find me on LinkedIn. And I do share little tools, tips, videos, articles, all kinds of stuff around everything mindset, because I'm a pretty big fan of remembering that everything starts and ends here. And when we learn to manage that conversation in our head a little differently, we find the space to be able to get out of our head and take some action and do what we need to do for whatever it is we're trying to accomplish. So it all starts there. LinkedIn is a great place. I'm here monthly with you, Lindsay. How about you? Where do we find you?
Yes, podcast, healthaccountabilitycoach.com or direction, not perfection is where you can find me. And we are going to continue doing this once a month. So if questions didn't get answered, if you can get to them to us ahead of time, that we will kind of go in the order in which they came. And I owe Allison an apology right now because we didn't get to yours, but it's because I know you're really well protected. Once we jump off the call as well, we will get to it. So
You're
yes,
putting together your podcast trilogy, so I'm happy.
Oh, I
I'm
don't
good.
doubt it.
I picked it up and started going.
100%. All right. So thank you, everybody. My goodness, mwah, thank you for coming, and we'll be back next month, and I'll shoot it out. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.